Okay. Thanks, Heather. So yes, and I'll kind of remind you as we go along about some housekeeping here and our YouTube channel. I will refer to some of those workshops because we've already got quite a few on there. And so if anybody's new to Blomquist and how workshops work, or how, the anxiety program works, or how you sign up for those, the same way you signed up for these, we put them, a link for you to register for the classes on the blomquisthell.com website under workshops, and you just register for them. So yeah, you can see the divorce group that's ongoing on there. This is support separation group. You don't have to be divorced, partnership depletion, whatever you want to call it. And then the anxiety program's ongoing. And then if you ever have any questions about our benefit, if you're new, like I said, then you can reach out to us. And if you need further help in some of these subjects that we have, then yeah, let's get you in to see a therapist. So, and we'll keep you muted, but for sure we want interruptions. If you want to interrupt me, you can chat, you can raise your hand, you can do any of those things, and we'll have a little bit of a discussion here for sure, but power through. If you know me, they're full of information, full of references, and I always talk about books. So we will definitely go there today as we talk about how to get present, how to get focused, how to reconnect, whether that's, I'm going to definitely focus on connection of relationships because that's what this is, right? So I was going to play some relaxing music as we entered here, in the background of this relaxing music. That's why this is here, just to show you that's like, wait, how do we get into a relaxed state of our body instead of being completely disconnected? And what fight, flight, or freeze is. And of course, you've heard that before. We go over that a lot. And then what is focus? What is the lack of focus? And we're going to talk about the brain. So that's what I do to kind of explain some of that. And then the differences between like zoning out and dissociation. I'm going to, dissociate. I'm going to get into a complete mindless, unpresent state, or am I just zoning out? And mindfulness is a present state, and how we connect the dots with all that so we can be present. And so hopefully we'll get to all that and go over and jump through the hoops on some of this stuff. But we have to first understand dissociation. We have to understand what that is in this, mental state, okay? Because it is a mental state. It's where the person disconnects from their feelings, thoughts, memories, sense of identity, and sometimes time and place, and like seriously where you are, okay? So feeling disconnected from yourself and the world, okay? Problems with handling intense emotions. So these are all just check marks of if you are in some of these. And of course, hopefully you have a notebook, you have a piece of paper. I'm still letting people in here too a little bit. And so do a little checklist, right? How am I disconnected? How am I connected? Am I attached to my body, my emotions, my mood, what I'm doing? This definitely is connected to depression, anxiety. It triggers sensory issues from trauma inside your body, outside your body, because trauma is stored. So in your cells, honestly. So We can talk about that a little later. We're going to talk about the body, fight, flight, freeze, and the brain and everything. But so then we get to the parts where our identity is different at times. Now, these are all okay. So look at them, gaps in the memory. How can I say that these are all okay? Anybody know? Are you going to have lapse of memory? Your identity is going to change. You're going to go in different parts of you. Parts. I do lots of parts work in I'm a clinical mental health counselor, the CFLE, and a few other things. So I do a lot. I'm extensively trained in several areas of trauma work, and I do IFS, which is parts work. So is this a problem? This list, I just want to know, does this feel really icky? You're not attached to your body and your emotions and your mood and your sensories, and you feel foggy all the time, and you're unsure, and your identity is like, ugh, I don't know who I am, and then I have memory lapses or gaps. It's a pretty disturbing list. So let's see. It can cause issues in relationships. Yes. And that's the end of this PowerPoint today, of like the whole point a little bit, right? Sometimes it's to be okay when you're just trying to survive. Yeah, it looks like a lot feeling like binging TV. Is that what this is on TV? Yeah. So yeah, it's like, my biggest thing is really defining what an avoidance is and what a distraction is. So really the other way around. So here's a great distraction, and here's an avoidance, right? So when we get into avoidances, we're going to do a lot of things that disconnect us from a lot of our body and our emotions and people. So so let's see, mistakes with me not listening or being interested in what he is saying. Yeah. So so when you're not listening or being interested in what someone is saying, it causes a disconnect. It's really, really difficult in relationships when you're checked out, right? And you think you're not checked out, but we are. So yes, this is where we're going to talk about those kind of things in how to get out of, shutdown. Yes. And dissociation, someone says, is dissociation the same as shutdown? It can be the same as zoning out. And yes, we're going to, PTSD, I think you meant there, that comment. So yeah, that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. But just look at this list and think, okay, which ones of these are we doing more? Which ones are these, kind of getting in the way, of relationships, of work, of connection, right? So connection to your body is huge, and feeling foggy. This one, and yeah, we're going to go through still in focus, what our focus and our fogginess is happening right now. So one book, I have it right here. John Kabat-Zinn is the key person that has really brought out some mindfulness. So we're going to definitely talk about this book that I just put as a picture. So what causes this? Well, here's your list of basic stuff. Someone said something about PTSD. Yeah, there's some mental health disorders down here, whatever number that is. You lose time, you impaired by drugs, you burnout level. There's 5 levels of burnout: flooding, fight, flight, or freeze. There's fawning, but there's flooding. Okay. So flooding, anybody heard of that from Gottman's work? He calls it flooding. We call it flooding now. I mean, so flooding is like, here's fight, flight, or freeze, but flooding is where we completely go into shock, if you will. If your leg is bleeding, if you're knocked out, you're going to go into, or you're going to pass out or go into a coma, and you're in complete shock because you're bleeding out your leg. that is what it is. Yes. And I kind of said there's fawn now in here, but we kind of stick to the basics of the fight, flutter, freeze, but there is fawning in here now. But flooding is where, it's like fawning is part of it now. We kind of add those in now. That's like an additive to the fight, flight, or freeze that, from research, but flooding is like, okay, we're completely over the suds of 10. I call it, it's an 11 out of 10. So we really don't know what we're doing, how to fix something, how to ask for help. We're completely flooded in a shock experience in the body. So, and if we're in this, a lot of the times you're going to have some severe health issues, because that you can't stay in that for, you think about it, your adrenals are just out of sight, because you're trying to keep alive. You're trying to keep your body alive. So stress, okay, so go back up to the top here. These two I have, I think, really pretty good workshops on these that are already on the YouTube channel. Please go to Stress Science or Sleep. So the sleep one, and I put this in parentheses too, but the sleep one is called Why We Sleep on YouTube. So these two are your top contenders to really causing some severe dissociation. And so this is what causes anxiety and depression, sleep deprived, sleep issues. There's study after study after study on that. And the biggest thing that you can help anything, for anything and everything, honestly, is getting better sleep. You want to improve anything in your life, this is what we work on. So Why We Sleep, it's a book. I did a workshop on it. It's on YouTube in our Blomquist Hill YouTube channel. So burnout, that's a whole other thing, just impaired mental disorders, poor diet, medical issues, of course. If there's a medical issue, that is going to have huge issues for your body, your brain fog, your focus, all those things. So we have to rule out medical issues too, right? Okay. So there's some causes. There's some causes, but I'm going to go through some other causes from this book, which is right here. So I don't have the book. I have him quoted and I have it in the back. So this is Johann Hari's last book of Stolen Focus. I have a workshop on this, and this is one of the slides from his attention problems. So here's, fight, flight, or freeze, and then here's the lack of focus, but it's really comes down to not being present. So when we are not present, we're in a stress response. For example, we're in a mental or physical exhaustion. I already, listed that in the causes in the last slide. But what he's found in his research, this big, nice, thick book, he's a journalist. He's awesome. He has 3 of my other favorite books. He's in my top 10 authors. He's just a really good writer. And it explains, so stress, diet, but manipulation of technology, but crippling flow states. What does that mean? The top one there. Crippling flow states. Does anyone know what flow is? It's the opposite of, fight, flight, or freeze, but it's a flowing. You can't really be in shock. You can't be in flooding. So it's the other side of the F, So does anyone want to explain or chat really what flow means? Seems you pass quickly. You get into yeah. So like, time. So, yeah, if, I'm going to just take a second and remind people to take their video off unless you want to be on YouTube. So just, this is being recorded. So, and so flow is a state, let's see, like staying busy in order to avoid facing something. It's not an avoidance. You can stay in the flow, but yes, it does stay there. But let's see, flow to means or I don't know what that means. Just are going through the motions. So flow is a point of in your body. Okay, so think about it this way. Athletes. It's in a zone of extreme being in the moment. It is actually not being in the back of your brain. You're actually in the flow of being in this straight. Think of an athlete. They are very present, when they're swimming or running, or, I used, when I talked about flow and the other workshop, I talked about, it was just the Winter Olympics or something. And after I'd watched one of, our athletes snowboard, and he had a concussion after he had like crashed, and he'd come all the way back up, and he's just like this Olympic kid, in snowboarding. And I just was so impressed by his flow and how he could get back to that state, even though after a severe head injury and trauma, right? So he had to be in flow. And so even when you're reading a book, you're in flow and you're right there in the present with the book, right? Or you're right in that level. And the thing is it's about the body, and you can do extreme things when you're in flow, extreme athletic abilities. I'm thinking of a book, but I can't remember the whole title. It's something Superman, and it talks about all of the athletes and how they stay in flow. And this is what's crippling flow. Okay. So losing all sense of yourself while doing something, meaning, yes, time can, but you have swimming, sports, painting, reading, gardening, you can be in this flow and you're just really present, but you're really going. And yes, time just goes, because anxiety makes time speed up and depression makes time slow down. So what's in the middle? Flow, just time, and it just flows. It just floats, right? So it's a little bit of that. Okay, I'll check the chat. It's not quite as autopilot, because autopilot we're going to talk about, that's more zoning out. So when you're just in and you're painting something, you're really in the flow and it just like comes together, right? When I'm doing something creative or drawing or writing, when I was writing a chapter for a book that I published, it just flowed, right? And I was in the flow, and I set my body up like that, and just comes, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyways, what's happening is this is crippled. So we're not in the flow. We're not in the present. But these things are some of the things he lists in here about stress response and diet, the response to the rise of ADHD. It's like, what's going on here, right? And of course, he wrote most of this during COVID, and we don't have statistics. Yes, flow is the goal. Because someone just said, is flow the goal? Yes, because here's depression, time slows down and you lose time, and it slows way down. And anxiety speeds up time, like in your brain and your body. We want it to just be in the middle. We want you to be present in just that, just balanced, right? So there's some things there. So we have to talk about this. My favorite, I have this everywhere. This is my slide of like, okay, simple CBT stuff, where we have the brain working in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Oh, and then we have a behavior, and then that sends us to a thought again, then a feeling, then a behavior. And you have to understand that this is an ongoing flow of your life. Now, you can be in a free situation, it's going to stop all this, or you're going to be in a flight situation, you're just going to go faster, right? So see how time is different in your brain. So this is self-talk, right? The frontal lobes. You have a physiological response. You have a reward system. You have reasoning. You have organizing up here. And so the reasons why this doesn't work, because this is really important to stay in the present, you have to be in the part of the brain that you're self-talking in, and not in PTSD, for example, back here, in fight, flight, or freeze. So that's always in the back. It's always in the back of your brain. Just go with me on that. And so we kind of move from like here to here to here and go, oh, I'm just in fight, flight, or freeze, or I'm in burnout, or I'm impaired, or I have a mental disorder that keeps me from processing self-talk. So this is really important. So the key is like, how do I get back to self-talk? Well, there's lots and lots of tools on how to get yourself back to the frontal lobes, which is presence, which is mindful, which is wise mind, which I'm going to teach you at the end here about wise mind and mindfulness. So, okay. Yes, that's one about flow. Yes, someone just posted about a book, an experience, and I'm not going to, I don't know how to say their last name. So I think he was a pioneer researcher in this area. Yeah, I would think so. I'm going to find, if you want, you can email me, but the other one is definitely about athletes and flow. It's just a really great book. I have it downloaded. I can't think of the full Superman title right now, but okay. So again, let's just understand how the brain works a little bit. Here's your fight, flight, or freeze, and how to be assertive, which is the opposite of these, is being direct and just being in the middle, right here, present. You have to be assertive with connection and relationships. You have to be, out of fight, flight, or freeze, because it won't work. You'll either be aggressive, passive aggressive, or passive. That's fight, flight, or freeze in relationships. So this is very, very important to understand. There's a T over here on this slide that's covered up by the picture. So, okay. So the vagal nerve is very important to kind of understand. And I threw this in here because here's the frontal lobes, here's the brain, now let's talk about a nerve that runs all the way through your body. Okay. Now there you go. Squirrel a little bit. The Rise of Superman. Thank you. Yes, that's the one I'm talking about. Someone posted it. Thank you so much. The Rise of Superman. So in the vagus nerve, we want to get this to the point of understanding what shutdown is, what trapped is, what numbed is. Okay, when I'm in a numb state, when I want to be just completely shut down, right? But it does prepare us to go into fight or flight or freeze if we need to. But what's happening is we're doing a lot of, I think this is dangerous, right? So you leave your frontal lobes and you go into fight, flight, or freeze when it's really not dangerous, right? So we do a lot of thinking errors. That's what I teach in the 5-week program in the anxiety class. So just understanding this a little bit, let me just go to the next slide because this is a visual, okay? So this is your different body sensations that happen, okay? So if when you get this PowerPoint, you can look at this and go, okay, how often am I in this one, in digest and rest? How, so I can be in a social engagement. I can have connection and safety. I feel safe. I'm mindful, in the present, grounded, settled, calm, okay? This is what we're going to talk about today, this one. This one is all just, we all know what this one is. This is what this feels like. These are the, this is actually what, is the, I guess, the consequences of staying in these. You're going to have this kind of, it decreases, right? Okay, yes. But here's increases blood pressure and heart rate and fuel, adrenals, your oxygen goes down, blood clotting, your pupils actually dilate. So when you're in the fear brain, right? But this is what we want to be in the ventral vagal nerve. Okay, space. I know this is a little bit much. But it decreases your defense response. So we can get connected and present. So there is a science to this, the polyvagal therapy that I'm trained in and have a couple books on, that's what we do just to calm the body in order to get in this state. So there's lots of coping mechanisms to get to that state after we've been, in the zoning out, the fight, flight, or freeze, the non-present experience that we're. So remember, dissociation is when instead of staying in the present, you face, you can't face the stress and exit your thoughts and feelings and body sensations to completely go out. Now, there's a difference between dissociation and zoning out and autopilot, right? So again, let's go back to this now that you know a little bit more about the brain and frontal lobe, right? Is it okay to be on autopilot? And when and where? Let's have a 5-minute discussion on that. When is it okay to be back to that list, right? When is it okay to be zoned out and lose your memory a little bit? And because we have to give ourselves some credit here and how the brain works. So think about autopilot. We've all heard of it, right? When is it okay to be on autopilot? Let's see. When you're cleaning, of course. It's a therapeutic thing to do. Let's see. Just see. Becoming a problem can stop sensation. I'm just reading this. In relationships, yeah, it's a problem. But so when are we on autopilot? It actually saves our brain from being extremely exhausted. Anybody have an idea? Give me an example of, it's part of the word auto. So, yeah, when we're driving, showering, let's see, sleeping. Oh, well, yeah, sleeping's a little, yeah, we definitely need to be driving to work. Okay, so let's start there. So driving to work. Oh, I was looking at the chat and it changed my slides instead. So, okay, so driving to work is essential. So think about it. So stop for a minute and go, okay, if I had to retrain my brain on how to drive and turn on my car and put on the brake and put on the gas and put my seatbelt on and turn the radio on. I mean, think of all the steps we do millions and millions of times a day without even thinking. It would be extremely exhausting if you had to teach yourself how to brush your teeth every single morning. So it saves us, okay? So I want you to make sure you understand this. It's okay. It saves us to do those rituals. It saves our brain from exhaustion. There's times where we say, oh, I didn't even, know that I was getting off the exit and here I am and I lost time for 10 minutes, right, on the freeway. It's okay, but it's, it's like, well, we lost time, but we're in a vehicle going, 80 miles an hour. But that's what happens. We zone out for a minute because we just aren't really thinking about anything, or we're just, we lose our feelings and thoughts and we stay in there. So yeah, when we're driving a vehicle, we do it, but we want to be careful with that one. Of course, brushing your teeth is a way better one. Now, and of course, you've heard of this, right? At least a couple times a week, go a different way home, even if it's just to the store and back. Go a different way home so it takes you out of autopilot. Use your left hand to brush your teeth. You've heard this, right? I mean, just to kind of wake you up a little bit. And the thing is we need to just be mindless for a minute or 2 or 10 throughout the day. But it's definitely a way to prioritize. So it is so, yeah. When we're doing anything routine, right? So it's like, I know how to put on my shoes. I know how to tie my shoes. I know how to, you have a shower, you do all these things, right? And you just do them. You don't have to have a checklist form. So when and where, is that. So you kind of go through knowing that that's okay. So when we need to get into wise mind, we have to, so when you're doing those things, you don't have empathy, you don't have integration, you don't have insight, you don't have those things. So when you need to get into those things, when it makes a difference, that's when we use wise mind. This is the dialectical behavioral term. We use this in the anxiety program a lot, right? I teach about emotional mind and reasonable mind, which I call logical mind, right? So it's logical and emotion together. So you have two sides, you're putting them both together. So you have to be up here to integrate this part. And in order to connect with insight, empathy, or integration, right? Connecting your whole body, your whole vagus nerve together, you have to be up here. You have to be in this wise mind. Okay. So now let's talk about, halfway in here. What do we do about it if it is causing us trouble, which is why most of us are probably here going, hey, I'm not as focused as I used to be. Well, statistically, that is the number one thing people complain about right now. Think about post-COVID. We are the most unfocused people. So, what do we say to that? Are we paying attention? Are we getting, are we irritable? Because if we're not present and we're having other issues, we're going to definitely have irritability problems. We're not going to be mindful. We're going to have relationship problems. Road rage is up 300% in some places. So, So here's a little step down, right? So here's, okay, stress management. That has to happen, right? So think of the stress of the body. We have to calm the body to get into our frontal lobes, to become more connected and instead of disconnected. So, and then we're going to go over mindfulness today. These are just the main thing in chronic trauma, childhood trauma and chronic trauma or developmental trauma or any of those things. That definitely is an underlying issue of dissociative disorders. Okay. So these are some of them. So if we get into these at the bottom here, I mean, we need treatment from here down for sure. And so this is where we really need professional treatment. So if we get into this, right, and an identity disorder, and like I said, I do a lot of parts work. So, it really has to be able to be full DID. It has to have a diagnosis and some severe history taking. Okay, so how can we help another who is disassociated? Dissociated people that are not apparently present. It depends on what level they're at. Of course, if there are children and they're just completely disconnected from their selves or body, an eating disorder does that. You completely disconnect you from your body. So we need treatment, right? So how to help them? Treatment. So TCBT, this is what you find in a therapist, right? So DBT is that dialectical behavioral therapy, trauma-focused CBT, prolonged exposure. I teach a little bit of that in the end of the 5-week anxiety program. EMDR and IFS. EMDR and prolonged exposure, the only two that are scientifically proven to treat PTSD. So is post-trauma. So IFS is that internal family systems parts work that you can work with a therapist on that. You can find a parts IFS therapist. But I'm trained in that. Several of us are. It's a very, 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 very helpful theory or modality to use with parts. So this part dissociated. This part is present. So we have different parts to us. So we go into those different parts and find them and find out what's going on when someone zones out right into those parts. So how to get mindful to treat this. Okay, ready for that? Next. So we have to understand what mindfulness is, right? So like I said, it's just getting present, but of course, a lot of you probably have known what this is, what mindfulness is, how to find yourself being present. It's not necessarily, it's not, you know, you can meditate, and meditate is different than mindfulness. You can mindfully meditate, but it's not just meditation. It's an awareness of daily being without judgment. It's being in the present. So lots of John Kabat-Zinn, those books here, wherever you go, there you are. I have a workshop on this that's on YouTube, the mindful way to how to get through depression. So I think it's called Getting Through Depression Mindfully on our YouTube channel. And he's one of the authors on this, and I go through that. But he emphasizes that mindfulness is not a mental trick. This is not to clear your brain, not to clear your thoughts, not to meditate on white space, right? Or to clear your, no, it is just essential for everyday life. It's how we get into who we are, where we are, how we order ourselves to survive, and then how we just be, right? It's about just being. And then the second part is experiencing it. And the third part is without judgment, experiencing it in the present. He talks about how, why we jump to the future and like, oh, we need to do this, and we jump to that before we do this, or that. And so it's a little bit of time management too, right? But it's our thoughts. It's a lot more into our thoughts of awareness, paying attention. So initially, you're just paying attention to the experiences and feelings. Now, if you're in some of your parts that don't like pain and don't like feeling and don't like exposing yourself to emotion or vulnerability, you're going to stay in dissociated states a lot more. So yes, we have to pull us out of and into that vulnerability so we can be present. But that's where we go, is we just don't want to feel. We don't want the pain. So that's when we go into the other parts of non-mindfulness, non-presence. Okay. It's also radically accepting, that's a DBT term, radical accepting your thoughts without judgment again, and how you practice that. So this is how you practice a little bit, right? So you write down right now, look around, figure out what you see, sit up, move your body, because we're going to take a 5-second break about how to get present. So the first thing you do is move. So stand up, turn around, do as much as you can, move your legs, pick them up, anytime you move, right, you're going to get a little more present. That's the easiest. Just quickly, it's not listening to your breath. It's just like, okay. And what am I feeling, seeing, doing, touching, your 5 senses. And then it's like, okay, now notice your thoughts, certain things that are coming in, and you write those down. So it's not changing them. It's not changing them at all. It's not changing yourself. It's just being with it, right? This is hard, just being with it. And so it's like, wait, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to think about that. Oh no, wait, that dark thing came in, or that thought came in, or negative or painful thoughts came in. It's not to empty those. The key here is to sit in them, to literally sit in them and be in their space and watch them out here a little bit. Okay, I'm having a weird thought. I'm having, all the things that I've got to do tonight when I come from work. Okay, so just come back to presentation and be present and go, oh, the goal is to be here now, and don't judge your thoughts. Don't change them. That's the difference that we get wrong with mindfulness, I think. So focus, okay, is now showing your interest in that activity or taking whatever's taking your attention. Go back to the point of concentration. Maintain or completed a goal. So then you go into flow. That's what that is. So then you go into flow. When you know you're in flow at work, right? You've got music on, you can stay focused. If you get interrupted, you're able to go right back into it. You don't get distracted, honestly, we're not really good at it. We have a very poor statistic of how long we actually stay focused on one thing. I could read it, from Johann Hari's book, but yeah, we have a serious problem with it. So reducing stress increases productivity. Of course, your body's going to be a lot more healthy and less activated, and you're able to stay more present. So, okay, anything else? Let's see. Someone put a some flow in there. Cool. How can we get, we answered that a little bit. Snapping people out of it. I don't know. How do you get people out of coming back to the present? Okay. So talk a little bit about the flow here of being mindful. So just notice is a great word. I like just be, we won't talk about why I love just be, but I've wrote about it. So sound, thoughts, emotions, right? You label them. Labeling is 90%. If you can just label it, wow, I hear the clock ticking. I hear the sound. Oh, I'm going to look outside for it, come back. And then that builds awareness. You're training your brain to build awareness, and it's not reactive. You're not reacting to anything. Remember, there's no judgment. So there's no reaction. And then you relax and balance your vagus nerve. And that actually calms the body, and then you do it again. So that's just a little cycle there for you. Okay. More tips on staying present, right? You want more? So you can get to the flow of mindfulness. So this is connection tips of, like, say you're talking to someone, for example. So everybody's played, I was a child that we didn't have TV growing up. So feel sorry for me. I mean, like, we were outside. So 6 kids, rural town, like, so if we were going to play a game or if we were going to make something, we had to figure it out, right? So you think about the telephone game that you'd play at a, kid's birthday party or something. I remember playing it in a couple activities with groups when I was a little kid, and it never came out right, right? Does it ever come out right? Does communication ever come out right? What's right and wrong? If you're mindful, there is no right and wrong. There's no judgment. But it didn't come out the way that the person started it, right? So it's like, so funny, right? And then you'd laugh because it was like a really funny, like, statement that came out in the end, and everyone laughed. It's like, oh man, we really, get confused along the way. We only hear what we want to hear, right? So, but are we really paying attention? Probably not. So this is just a slide about that. Anybody play the game when you were a kid, or am I the only one? Am I the only old one in this group? It's like, kids don't play these games anymore. They just have cell phones. And then we just get confused about texting and what the real meaning is in the text, right? Okay, good. Oh, good. I'm not the only one. I think it's hilarious. I mean, it's a good comical, oh, good. I'm not the only one. Okay. I'm not old. I don't feel old. But I am having a very monumental like birthday this year. So how do you pay attention? Try to engage. It's your body. It's connection. I don't even talk about communicating, even though it's communicating, right? But 90+% is this. And so words don't come out right. So texting is the telephone game for now, for kids now. It's crazy. It's exactly what it is. It's like, okay, wait, does this mean this or this in your text? I'm like, what? Question mark? How many times have you like, that didn't make sense? What? And I was like voice to texting and it didn't come out right. It's still like what we do every single day. And it's so confusing. And we get totally lost with the content of and the context of the text. So you can watch my 10 C's to communication workshop on that. But there's just some things, right? To keep us moving, step back 2 feet, nod your head, sit up, right? Summarize what the person's saying, right? So it's like, oh, okay, I understand that, but help me understand this. If we did that better, we'd focus better on the speaker. Okay. So if we do some mindfulness, and if we're not present, what happens to our relationships? We're going to spend 5 minutes on that and then close up with questions. So back to now, disconnection and relationships. So this is just a little slide of like, okay, Johan Hari again. What causes depression and anxiety? Disconnection. So his other book is called Lost Connections. So here's stolen focus and then lost connections. So disconnection from meaningful things. You disconnect from your childhood trauma, so you just shut down. You disconnect from nature. You disconnect from hope. Sounds awful. Not very fun. And you disconnect mostly from other people. So this has been a problem in our society in the last couple of years, right? Because we were forced to disconnect. And now it's like, God, I just don't really connect as much as I used to. And I'm having problems with being present. And I'm losing time with depression, and time is speeding up with anxiety. So just something to think about there. So let's recap a little bit. So how do you, focus on sleep? Watch my Why We Sleep workshop. Spending 60, this one's, these two are from his Stolen Focus. So he did a whole bunch of experiments and found a whole bunch of research. Is that what he does? Johan Hari, he kind of brings in all the research, and then he did his own experience with his phone. And so, yeah, you can read that if you want, but it's a pretty big book, but you can find some mile markers with those. Take breaks. So what do you do with a distraction and an avoidance? So a distraction is a 10-minute distraction up to 1 hour. Okay. So take breaks. A distraction is stopping to go to the bathroom and back, to go do something else and coming back. So when kids are doing homework, this is essential to retrain the brain and bring yourself back. So distractions are good, even if it's autopilot, right? If you're going for a walk for 5 minutes, just don't think about anything. You're just mindfully walking. Good distraction, and it's autopilot. And then you take a break from it, and then you can come back to what you were doing. Some 5-HTP, L-tyrosine, omega-3. So these two are as an integrated medicine certified mental health provider. That's what I am. I'm certified in lots of training in supplements for mental health. So these are just a couple. So that's why they're on here. L-tyrosine is an amino acid neurotransmitter, and omega-3s are, of course, our brain fat. We are depleted, and vitamin D3, after the winters. I mean, we don't get much sun, but we've had some pretty good storms. So at least we haven't had inversions, but, we've had clear air, but we still don't get enough sun. So those are things that actually keep us here during the day and keep us more present. You can look those up. But omega-3s are essential for brain health, for focus. Don't listen to your thinking errors, your automatic negative thoughts, right? You're going to hear them and you're going to sit with them, but you're not going to listen to them. You're going to push them out. If you want more on that, watch the Thinking Errors workshop. How do you train your brain? By practice, doing it over and over and over again. Meditation with breathing definitely scientifically brings more focus. Okay, so wait a minute. We're not supposed to multitask? We were told for a long time that it was okay to multitask. It's absolutely not. It's one of the worst things you can do, because we're just doing that all the time, right? We're eating and driving at the same time. We're multitasking. We're having a conversation with someone while we're sending an email to someone, right? We're just halving it, right? We're just not present. So play and creativity is one of the best things. Of course, the connection of that. I have Brene Brown's Gifts of Imperfection listed in the back of this. That's about this. So how do you get into play and creativity? That's one of the books that you can check out. That one's always at the library. Most of these are. Get outside and go into nature. Stay connected to people, fully connected. So picking one thing a day and how to do that. In Lost Connections, he kind of goes through some of that too. Okay, so running out of time. So y'all know Frankl, right? Viktor Frankl, one of my favorite little books. It's always sitting over here. So Man's Search for Meaning. He's got some really great quotes. So live as if you were living a second time and as though you had acted wrongly the first time. That's a little humility, don't you think? It's a little bit like, you know what? I can always do better. I can always be more present. So to me, that is repair. So when you have a challenge with a connection, which is another human, and you mess up and you're not present with them and you didn't hear them and you didn't meet their needs, it's called a bid. If they bidded for you for attention and you didn't give them that attention and you realize it later, apologize and repair it. So it's like, wait, I did that wrong. I know it now. And I'm going to tell that person, hey, I'm going to do better. We need to have each other's attention when we're actually connecting. We're not doing that. We're not doing that in our homes. We are alone together a lot more. We're home more than we've ever been home. We're actually eating dinner together more than we've ever ate dinner together. Statistically, I have it. The latest, because I did a workshop on it, and families and technology, but we're alone. We're home together alone. So that's what that means to me a little bit. How do we get more present and challenge ourselves to be in a vulnerable situation and look up, right? Okay, questions. Let me go to some books here. If anyone has questions on any of these books. Here's Kabat-Zinn. Tapping In is one of my favorite books that I use almost every day in therapy with my clients. Lost Connections, Stolen Focus, Altered Traits, Mindset. Mindset is an extremely awesome book. One of my favorites of how to get into a different mindset, growth mindset, fixed mindset. And I put on the top of here, Insight Timer app. It's a really great app to do any meditation, any IFS work, any body work. It times you, so it keeps you on task. So time is one of the best things you can do to keep on task. Having alarms, having time, scheduled things. So what else do you have any questions come in? Any questions, any comments? Let's see.